welcome to the Minnetonka Historical Society's biannual meeting. We're going to get to our presentation today in 1 minute. I just want to point out that we have some items over here. For a membership in the Minnetonka Historical Society, it's a donation of $10 or $15 a year. We have Mill Wheel, which is published 3 times a year. And then we have this beautiful book of the history of the Minnetonka Mills. It's very interesting. And that's a $15 donation. And then also we have some beautiful big photographs. Burwell House. Here's the Burwells at a country dinner in 1885. Kind of looks like the Paulsens and having a picnic in front of the farmhouse. And this is the Glen Lake Sand, which is not too far away from your farm, which is gone now. It's a golf course. So anyway, some items of interest, also a brochure. And so we welcome you to the Minnetonka Historical Society here. And Dorothy Welch will introduce them in a second. I just wanted to point out where this farm is, and perhaps one of the Paulsens could kind of tell us, just to get us oriented before we start the presentation.
Well, right where that A is, right where the farm was, that was town line.
Can you talk a little louder, please?
Okay, that was 17500 Town Line Road right there. And that's right where the farm was. And that park just to the north, across Purgatory Creek, that's where the Huber farm was. And now that's a park. And we used to walk to school once in a while up 62, which was Town Line Road, up to 101, and then the school was Skinny Kites.
Okay, our program this evening.
Go ahead. There's a little closer view.
Our program this evening is featuring 9 of the 10 Paulsen children, and our program this evening, that's better, is featuring 9 of the 10 Paulsen children, and for the one we're missing, his son is here with us tonight. And so we have the whole family, but especially their mother, Betty Paulsen, 92 years old, is going to be telling us the story of the Paulsen family and the dairy farm. I'd like Barbara Paulsen to begin by kind of setting the mood and telling us what we're going to see here.
The presentation tonight is going to be about the last dairy farm in Minnetonka. And it will be shown through maps, pictures, and whatever our family members would like to share. But first I'd like to go around the room and introduce everyone. I am Barbara.
Herbert.
Carol.
Jerry.
Gail.
Danny.
Deborah.
I'm Martin Paulsen. I'm filling in for the missing one, if you didn't guess, since I'm the youngest here.
Say your name.
Sharon. Kathy. Back to you, Barb. Okay. What we're going to do is to get the signal to Bill to turn to the next slide. Okay. And Mom, you can talk about this picture and the family.
Well, this is the picture of my husband, Herbert Paulsen's family, his mother and dad, and his sisters. There was Clara and Florence, and then his twin sister is standing next to him. That was Bernice, and then Marge. And this was taken at the grandfather's mother's home in Minnetonka Creek in Minneapolis. The food deal store was right in back of it. Yeah. And then this is the 4 generations of the Paulsen. It's my husband Herbert and Martin and our son, and then his dad, Martin John, and his mother, Catherine. And this is a picture of my mother-in-law, Agnes Paulsen, and my husband's twin sister, Bernice Paulsen. That's the picture of me when I was 16 and a picture of my husband when he was 16. That was a long time ago. And this is a picture of similar to what my husband did when he started working for the town of Hopkins back then. He had a team of horses, Colonel and Chubb. They were a white team. And he worked for Hopkins in the Minnetonka area with the grader and the horses. And they did the grading of the roads and opening different places for building what they had to have. Whatever was necessary, that's what they did. But mostly the grading of the roads and the upkeep.
And one of the locations that he did was in Glen Lake as
A lot
well.
of them were in Hopkins, and then Sparrow Road, I heard a lot about Sparrow Road. And all the roads there around the Minnetonka and Hopkins area, I can't remember some of them, the names, but they were big ones. Oh, and that is Herbert's in my wedding picture, and his twin sister Bernice was the maid of honor, and his cousin Robert Albright from from Hopkins was the best.
Were you married at Immaculate Heart of Mary?
We were married at St. John the Baptist in Excelsior.
The reason that I brought up the Glen Lake was the story of how Herb and Betty met. And it started with Herb grading the roads, and he graded into Glen Lake where Betty was attending school. And how did you meet him, Mom?
I used to get off at the school bus from Eden Prairie High School and get off by the sanitarium, and I had to walk home. And he would be bringing the team of horses home from a full day of grading roads and that in Hopkins, home to bed him down for the evening. And that's how I met him. We got to talking to him, got to pet the horses, and from then on it was history. And these here, when my husband and I first started out, we rented the Melcher farm, and that's about a mile up from where the old farm was, where we bought later. And this was the biggest FHA loan that Anoka Courthouse ever issued. And boy, I'll tell you what, they were out there all the time to make sure that we were doing things right and they were getting their money. And they checked on Dad and the cows, and with me, I had to take and raise a garden and plant what they told me to plant, and then they would check on me and count what I canned. And that was once a month, and I had to come up to the specification. And was I glad when that was paid off? Yeah.
What was the total, Betty? Remember what the total?
2,100, I think. That was to buy cows and a tractor. And the tractor that he bought was an Alice Chomber, and it had no tires on it. They were steel lugs. And when you rode in that thing, you know you rode on something. And then we named all our cows. All our cows had names. And we could tell, or then when we tell Oh, like one cow would kick, it'd probably be Cookie or something like that, or Daisy would have troubles, or Daisy needed to see the vet, have the vet out. And that's how we kept track of them, a daily track, and of the breeding purposes too.
What are some of the names on that list? Pearl?
Pearl, Peachy, Dolly, and Nanny, and Question. She had a question mark in the middle of her forehead. That's why we called her Question. There was a question.
And I'll just interject that my father, once he got married and he started his own hobby farm in Eden Prairie, and we had some cattle as well, and we also carried on the tradition of naming the cows. However, I got to name the cows, and they were all named after my aunts and my grandmothers. So I don't know how well. You, Deb, did not have a cow named after you, but we had Kathy, Barb, Sharon, Betty, Martha, so probably not the most flattering. I thought it was, but others might have felt differently, but they all had names.
This is a Clear Springs school that originally was called Purgatory Creek, and actually this is showing it after it had been renovated. There is another slide that will show it as it started out to be, and it was built in the 1800s approximately, and they renovated it in 1908. And as we were told, we're not sure, but our grandfather, Martin Paulsen, he helped renovate it. He was a carpenter. And our father, Herbert, attended this school, graduated in 8th grade, and at that time, 8th grade is what you graduated from. And his twin sister graduated as well, but she actually graduated the year before because Herb had to stay home and help on the farm, so his schooling was a little slower. And then as well, I attended that school, Martin attended that school, Herbert attended the school, Carol, Sharon, and Gail. And it was in kind of a transition at the time, so some of the children went actually to Deep Haven, and some went to Excelsior, and it was very strange, but that is how it went. That school presented some of the greatest ethics that we had. And one of the things I learned from Dad was that after you got done with a shower or done bathing or washing your hands, you always took the damp towel and pushed the cuticles back on your fingers that kept your fingers nice and clean. They didn't have pedicures and manicures back in that time for us at the farm anyway. This is the map of showing where it is. No, it came to Town Line Road, which ran between 101 and Clear Springs, Scenic Heights Road. This is the school as it started, was one room in the 1800s. And when they built this school, they actually stored it in a log cabin somewhere before they put it on this land. And the land was donated by Mr. Cordell, donated 1 acre. And the school was placed there, and then the addition was made. And unfortunately for us, they tore that school down. This is a picture of our classes. I'm the second one in the first row. Bert is in the middle of the side section on the very first row. And it was a wonderful school, and we walked. And there was no bus then, so we walked at least 2 miles one way and back home 2 miles. So it was a jaunt to go. And one of the most wonderful things we had was our lunches. We could either bring our lunch or one of the parents, Mrs. Beebe, made our lunches. And we had favorite things like her cherry cobbler, and then she made chili and peanut butter sandwiches and tomato soup and grilled cheese. I mean, it was like eating at home. It was wonderful.
We had to walk to school, right? And it was uphill both ways.
I was just going to add to that as I went into food service, And one of the items that was my favorite was the cherry cobbler. And that is an item that is still served in the school district now.
I'm standing next to the one, two, three, four, the fifth one over from the left side. First row. Fifth from the left, right.
One other
And this was,
one other comment about Clear Spring School, though, is Jerry and I both attended the new Clear Spring School, which was right across the street. So many of us did go to the new Clear Spring School, even though we were, a few of you went to Deep Haven, and Excelsior, but I know that Jerry and I also participated in Clear Spring School and then went to Minnetonka High School. The competition will come out in just about 10 minutes.
This is a picture of the 6 of us, the older ones. On the top left is Martin, and then next to him is Carol. On the bottom left is Sharon. I'm in the middle, and Bert is on the right, and the baby is Danny. Now, in that... Okay, Martin, who is deceased. Carol is next to him. Then Sharon is on the left. Then I'm in the middle. Herbert's on the right. And Daniel is, I'm holding Daniel. Now, in that time, there just weren't pictures taken. We didn't have, you just didn't put your money into pictures. So a man came by and offered to take the pictures, and Mom said yes. So she pulled out the piano bench, sat us down, and took Sharon, who was having a nap, and brought her out, and there we are.
and that picture was taken by Frank Knapp from, it's on here. Frank Knapp from Excelsior. And he started out at that time in the picture business and was going out to farms and taking pictures. And the kids just got home from school. And I don't remember when I'm looking at that I sent my kids to school with a shirt and tie like Marty has on. I don't remember that. Yeah. They just got home, and poor Sharon, I put a clean dress on her and didn't even get her collar put down.
Sit there, kid.
Yeah. That's down by the oak tree down below the hill. That's the back of the old farmhouse. And that was a porch, and it never was screened in. And that's Martin and Barbara, Carol, Bert, and Sharon.
This is a picture of Barbara and Carol. And the things I wanted to point out on this picture is that, look at the dresses we wore. We wore dresses all the time. You didn't wear pants. And so that meant huge amount of laundry. And we are standing alongside of Town Line Road, which you now know as 62. It was a little tiny dirt road. The cluster of the trees to the top on the right, Carol's adding, was where our farm stood. We were at the neighbors when this picture was being taken. But maybe Mother can address what it was like to do laundry for all of those clothes.
Oh, it was, yes, we had, I washed with the washboard and tubs. And then I graduated to what they call gasoline engine on a wash machine, and it had a magneto. And you had to crank that thing to get it going. And then, well, about the time you were getting ready to wash clothes and you couldn't get the machine going, then you got out the tub and you got out the rubber dub, the washboard, and then put that all in the tub, and then you wash clothes. And that's how we did our washing in those days. And that wash machine just about went out the kitchen door quite a few times.
The
Yeah,
clothes
when I
then,
couldn't
too,
get it started.
the clothes were cotton, so they had to be starched and sprinkled and ironed. It's not like today.
Outside up on the hill, behind the lilac bushes, people couldn't see me hanging up from the road and out, so it protected the clothes from getting dirty from the dust and stuff too.
And before that, if you look at that picture that we had earlier with us, standing in front of the old house by the oak tree, there's a clothesline draped across there with jeans hanging or pants hanging on it. I just noticed that. And it looks like a chicken standing there, too.
Well, it could be the chicken or the duck. It looks like the duck, because we had ducks.
For entertainment, we went sledding, and it's Marty, Barbara, Carol, and Bert.
And we're standing on
Crosstown, Town Line Road. It was dirty, very dirty. When the farmhouse needed to be replaced, we moved into this farmhouse, and it was built into a hill, which at that time was big. It was a big thing. Build your house into a hill. It would be cooler in the summer and warmer in the winter because there was no air conditioning for us. And that's the last house we had on that farm. You can see the car was 1956, so it kind of dates the picture.
And that's a picture of in our living room of the farmhouse of the couch in front of the big picture window, because you could see everything so much of Jerry and Kathy, Debbie and Gail. I have to stop and think. Okay, Jerry? Yeah, and Kathy? Debbie? And Gail? And this is my husband standing with his father, which was his farm that we bought from him, and Kathy and Gail, and Grandpa's dog, Trixie? Tippy. And this is my husband milking the cows. We used to, that was when we had to milk them. When we were starting out, we had to milk them by hand before we got the milker, before the electricity came in. It was a lot of fun. About 22 head at the time.
Picture of a cow and the new calf. The cow has a very rough tongue, and the calf will have mucus on it, and she cleans the calf up after it's born.
In that previous picture when Dad was milking the cows, us kids would run in the barn and we'd ask for milk and he would squirt milk into our mouths.
Warm milk, unpasteurized.
And I would add that sometimes you'd get it in the face whether you asked for it or not. That was one of Grandpa's favorite things, was just to kind of get you by surprise and squirt you with some warm milk. Exactly. And as one of the grandkids, too, it was always kind of fun because Grandpa, the next picture with the calves, it was always kind of, because I remember one of my memories was being young, and he'd always say, come put your fingers in the calf's mouth. And you're like, I'm not going to stick my hand in that thing's mouth, And it's like, but eventually put your 2 fingers in there, and the calf would just kind of suck away on it. And that was so cool to have this little calf sucking away on your fingers. So it was always kind of a neat little thing.
Oh, Gabby.
And I think the point of this picture was just that, as you can tell, it's the electric milker that we have and the cow strap that we had it connected to. But Dad let us all go down into the milking area, and we would help with the chores. He also allowed us to clean the gutters, even though that was supposedly a boy's job. But all of us got into the act, as well as spreading the straw for the cows at night. So we all participated, and I think that was it. All of us were down in the milking area with Dad and Mom. I think Mom was out there too. So
I wasn't out there as much as were when we moved from there to Corcoran. I was in the barn a lot, and that's when you and Jerry took over from the, because the rest of the kids were married and were back. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. And that is my husband. And
somebody has a question.
Did you get animal feed in fabric sacks that could be used?
oh, absolutely, from the feed store, yes. Yep, and you got those in feed sacks, and they were, you could make dresses out of them, aprons.
I remember waiting, we lived in Woodland Village, kind of down 101 and down on the corner.
Oh, sure,
I remember waiting until the next load of feed came
yeah,
to see if you could get one more yard of that material that you had from
yeah.
the last feed delivery, so you had enough to make something.
That's right, and that's what happened with my daughters. We were going to school, and then my mother and Mrs. Adolph Kurtz, Rose Kurtz, would make dresses for the kids. Well, back in those days, I wanted them to look nice. I starched them. The kids didn't like wearing starched clothes, and after they wore them, they looked like starched clothes. They didn't look good at all. What year did we get electricity? Yes. Ah. That was before you, what year were you born, Sharon? About that time. Yeah, 45, 46 in there. Oh, yeah, converted the wood stove over to the kerosene.
We had gotten electricity in 45 when we moved into the new house, because I remember the kerosene stove up in the old one, and you were so glad to get rid of it.
We had the wood stove in those days. We got the kerosene burners and put them in there, and that was a lot cleaner and easier than burning wood.
But tell about how you baked with wood and how you adjusted the heat accordingly.
Oh, yeah, you baked well. The women back then, the farm women, they in the summertime, they didn't, it was hot, so you knew just how to fire that cook stove and put the wood in there to bring that temperature just right to get about, 12 loaves of bread baked in rolls and stuff like that, and let the fire go out. And you did, you could learn to. Well, and then, with the electric milker, that made life a lot easier when we got that. Then the boys helped.
Can we go back to that a minute, Bill? One of that picture there of Dad and Bib overalls, and they were striped. He was wearing overalls before they were great and cool, and he was so angry when everybody thought it was cool and the price went up.
Oh, this is butchering the cattle, the pigs and that, and they butcher them and then they hung them up. And what is that, Bert? The hydraulic?
That's a loader. That's a
on
loader
the
bucket
tractor.
there. We've got hanging the beef on there.
I wasn't out there. I couldn't tell you much
We had
about that.
just skun it and we cut it in half with a saw. And that's Dad in the back behind that on the right side facing us, and then that's me on the right side there. And I believe I had a beard then. That's rare.
No, that's Bert.
I can't see who's that behind
On
there.
the right?
I think that is Marty in the middle with the saw.
That's probably Dad. And I was going to add that during the butchering time, it was always kind of neat. The guys would get to run the chainsaws and shoot the cow in the head and all the fun stuff. But us kids would be in charge of hauling the guts to the gut pile. So that's what we got to do, is load the guts up in the wheelbarrows and haul them away. So that was our little chore for the day.
That chainsaw that we use there, that's just like we used on wood and stuff. And we used to run the bar out in the oil in it, and we would wash it in boiling hot water, and that would clean the bar up good, because it only took us about 30 seconds to cut that beef in half. When we used the hand saw, it would take us 15, 20 minutes to cut that beef in half.
And that was the litter of pigs and that sow had a lot of pigs. And she did. It was, how many were there? About 15 of them. And my gosh. She raised them all.
Danny, what happened when the pigs were not accepted by the sow or were very weak?
Well, a lot of times what happens is something happens to the sow itself, and she would get up, and she'll have one, and she'll get up, and then she would eat it or kill it. And then she'd get lay down, have another one, and then she'd do the same thing until her whole litter is gone. And that happens once in a while, not too often, but it does happen. And normally if you have a sow does that, we get rid of them. The next time she can have a litter, and you wouldn't get close to them. They'll protect them that well. Just never know why.
What about Patty?
We had a pig named Patty. One of the sows, well, we could only save 2 of the pigs.
Yeah, we had one sow. She was having her litter, and she was doing that. She was having one, and then she'd get up and kill it. Well, one got pushed underneath a bunch of straw, and I noticed it was in there moving. So I got that one out before she charged me, and got that one up to the house. Well, in the meantime, she had another one, and I went for that one, and we had a board going across the door. When you go out, then there was the big door, and I made it through there before she came after me, because as soon as a pig makes its noise, the sow is right there. And lucky enough, I brought a 2x4 with me, so I put that in her mouth, and then I went out, and then we brought the pigs up. Well, the one that I found underneath the straw had a cut on the side, and that one didn't make it, but we had the other one. And Gail, you want to go ahead?
And we raised it in the kitchen of the farm. And we raised it in the kitchen at the farm. And Mom fed it with the baby bottle with, what was in
I
it?
cooked cereal, corn, and farina,
Yeah.
thinned it down with milk, and put it in the bottle, and had a big nipple on there and cut the end off. But, oh, that poor thing, it just ate it, followed me around all over the house.
But the pig was confined in the kitchen a lot in a box.
Yes.
So it
Lots of
lost the
straw.
use of its back legs, and so I rigged up a rope and put it on the back of the legs and walked it from one end of the kitchen to the other. And once it was walking on its own, then it went back out to the farm, out in the barnyard. So
Went out to the barn where she was born, stayed in there. We never locked the door. She had a chance to go in and out of the house or the barn. And then we would be milking in the morning, and we always had 1 or 2 cows that have a new calf. You can't use the milk for so many hours. So she got to have all the milk she wants, and she would come down there and meet us by the door in the morning. We'd feed her. Dad would give her her milk and that. She would lop it all up. She'd turn right around, go right back into her little stall, and then you don't see her for the rest of the day. And that was our little Patty.
Yeah, that's more pigs in the corner. Those were outside. Yep, born outside.
would like to address this picture. This is hauling hay, which was a very often occurrence during the summer. At least our goal was to get 4 cuttings off the hay to make hay. We have, I think it's Carol sitting on the tractor. We're not sure.
One of the few kids.
We have Bert on the top. Marty's there. Our neighbor Bob Owens, his father Lee Owens, our dad in the back. And then we are not sure who the other gentleman is, but we think it's Elvin Pika, who was our neighbor. And hay was a lot of work, haying, and it always came in the summer where it was hot. And you hauled hay no matter what. Fed the cows, the cattle.
And this is a picture of the 3 boys loading hay from the wagon to the truck because somebody had bought 100 bales of hay from us, and so we were just topping off the load so we could deliver it, and I'm up on the top of the wagon, or on the top of the truck, the top left, and then Marty is on the wagon, and that's Danny climbing up just to give us a hand, I believe.
Looks like you got your pants caught up.
Well, it looks to me like Danny was probably around 8, 9, no, yeah, about that, 9, 10. And Marty was, he was in his upper teens, and I must have been 13, 14 maybe.
I have a quick story to tell with the hay making. It was one day I was about 9 years old. My dad and I were driving our tractor and trailer over from our farm to Grandpa's farm on Town Line Road, and we passed a friend of mine from school. He and his mom were driving in a car, and we passed him on the road. Next thing we know, the car turned around, and up they come, and they asked if they could ride along with us over to the farm to bale hay. And I'm thinking, you want to come bale hay? Like Barb said, it's a lot of hard work. And he's like, yeah, I really want to. And his mom's like, yeah, he needs to get out of the house, you know. But my thought on that is, looking back on it, I thought the kid was crazy for wanting to come and bale hay with us. But looking back, what an opportunity. You know, at the time growing up on a farm, really didn't, you know, appreciate all the things I got to do at the time. But now I really am glad that I had the opportunities and wish more people had. It was a lot of fun. You got to do a lot of things that a lot of people don't. So I'm glad he got a chance to bale some hay, and I had some help that day, so it was kind of nice.
I just had one little thing I was going to top that off with. I noticed a couple of fellas that I grew up with in high school and stuff walked in the door tonight, and they're sitting in the back of the room, and they used to come over and help haul hay with me. So his Gary Johnson and Roger Redpath. Thanks for showing up, guys.
This also reminds me on the hay mill is I was just a young little girl, maybe 3 or 4 years old, and I still remember it. We also had turkeys, chicken, geese, and the geese could get very mean. And so I'm excited. There's my dad. He's up on the top of the trailer, 4 tiers up of hay, and I'm going to see him. And I go running out there, and wouldn't you know, that goose jumped me and started at my throat. And they'll go for your eyes or your throat. Dad jumped from that 4-tier trailer down and run at Goose's neck, and we had dinner.
So who's documenting it this day? The family has bought a camera?
Neighbors? Mostly neighbors. We conjured these up by just calling and asking, because we didn't have many. We have some of the families and the children, but these type of pictures we got from neighbors.
But we did have an old brown camera. I remember the old brown camera and taking pictures with that and rolling the film through. I mean, it was really an old antique model. But we do have pictures from that, so it was a blend. I think we had a lot of fun going through boxes of pictures, trying to find something that fit with the farm. This is Dad on one of the Moline tractors, and I think at some point, Mom, are you going to talk about the research when he worked with Minneapolis Moline?
Minneapolis Moline, and they did a lot of bringing out their, what do you call it? No, the experimental for the Minneapolis Moline, and the Papic silo filler was made by the Minneapolis Moline. And Dad swore by that tractor and anything that Minneapolis Moline made. He still has the tractor. The question on the floor is why the zero? I don't know. It might have been meant for me, but I didn't notice it.
Well, that's the U tractor, the one that Dad had bought that was in that recent picture, and the corn picker in the back. But I'm not sure exactly where that was at.
Well, to finish Jerry's question, this was out in our farmyard, and there was a huge, was it an oak tree that we had that had a huge limb that would hang over the driveway? And they would put this hook, if you look in the middle of the picture, there's a hook there. They would hoist different objects up on it. I remember transmissions being hoisted up on it a lot. And we did a lot of parking of cars underneath that tree, I think, for some people when they were dating some people in the audience. But I was too young to know about that stuff. So, Danny, you wanted to talk about the corn picker and the tractor?
I was just going to say with that hook there, a lot of our cattle was butchered there, and some of our pigs. And anything that we needed to do on the farm, working on any of our equipment that needs to be repaired, we would use that if we needed to jack it up in the air. That was our hoist. That worked out great, and that tree never failed.
This is the thrashing machine. This is how it was all performed, and the grain was taken care of. And who we had was Lawrence Schrader, and he was the one that would go around in our area with this type of a machinery, and then your neighbors would help each other out, and they would help load up and haul the bundles in from out of the field to feed the machine. And then when you fed the thrashers at noon, then you would put a wagon and bring it out and set it out in the field and put a clean sheet over it or a white blanket, and then you set up all your food in that out there, and plates and the silverware, so the farmers could go and eat, because they didn't take time to wash hands in that. They just wiped their hands on old rags, and then they would eat and then go back out in the field again. And when you fed them, boy, you didn't have a little something. You gave them beef and pork and fried chicken and ham, and then you had mashed potatoes and gravy and scalloped potatoes and vegetables from the garden and lots of desserts, pies. And I would make pies in the big flat, like cake pans and that, and cut them in big squares. It was easier to serve them and cook and keep them. And then I had an old lace curtains that I would cover the food up with to keep the flies. Anything worked to keep the flies from getting to the food.
And she would get up at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, and she would start this whole process of making homemade rolls, donuts, bread, just for the next day, for that day. And normally, with a big family, she didn't have nothing left over by the end of the day.
Some of the workers and the neighbors, they would come and they wouldn't go home at night. They would sleep up in the haymound, and their kids would be with them. So when they got up in the morning, I never knew how many I was having for breakfast, but I made sure that I had enough. Farm women didn't run out of food. They were busy baking. It was fun, though. Good old threshing rig. It sure did its job.
This is an old steam engine right there that's running the thrashing machine. And then the neighbors had such great horses. Sometimes when you'd go out there to pick up your oat bundles, which was stacked in the field to dry, and usually you put like 4 to 5 bundles of grain oats together. You'd put 4 of them around a circle, and then you'd spread one over the top, and that would shield the water off until they were dried, when it rained. And then you would load them up, and then the horses they had, I remember the neighbors, they had them so well trained, they didn't even have to talk to them horses. When they threw them bundles on, and sometimes I would be on the wagon stacking the bundles, and the guy would just walk over to the next set of bundles, and the horse would just go right over alongside that pile and stop. And if they didn't stop just right, he would just give a little grunt like, oh, and that horse would stop, and if he said something else, they would back up. And then you'd bring it up to the machine like this here, and you'd fork it into the thrashing machine. And that last picture that was on it showed the straws flying out of one end, and then the oats went into another wagon. And this is a horse that I had purchased, and we used it for entertainment on the farm there. And my brother and I both worked with it, and it was a registered horse. It was almost a full-blood Arab. And I'll tell you one thing, that horse could really run. In fact, one of the gentlemen that's here, he would try to race it with his motorcycle, and a lot of times he didn't win. And my brother Danny helped train him a lot. So that was one form of entertainment. And that is Danny on the horse right now. This is the neighbor's place across the street. He's standing right in the front yard in front of the new house that we had. Crosstown would have been right there between that house and where he's sitting. You see that small road there? That's Crosstown Highway.
And you look at 62 now, and it's hard to visualize anything like that. It's solid house. Tippy's a dog.
This is a dog that we had, Tippy. Little bunnies. Everybody has to have some little bunnies. This is a picture of our farm that sits in the back from our neighbors, Owenses. They provided this picture. So it's just seeing the very tip of our house that was sitting in the hill. I'm not sure where, this is the elementary school that we talked about and where it's located, which is right on 101. And as Deborah had mentioned earlier, the new Clear Spring School sits on the right side of it or the west. These. Okay.
We used to swim in the creek there, that Purgatory Creek, and we had a homemade bridge going across that went over to the Huber's property that's in the green up there on the top of the picture. It's called Purgatory Park now. And then where the Purgatory Creek crossed Scenic Heights Road, which was over a little bit to the right there from that green area, it would where the water swirled around when it come out from under the road, it was deeper there, so we used to swim in there, and we could dive in it. It was deep enough. It was probably 4 to 6 feet deep, and we used to fish in there once in a while, but we didn't catch much.
Yes, we did. We caught leeches all over us. So we didn't go in it very often.
It's a bird. I had them all over my ankles.
The boundaries of our property, up there where the green is, that's Purgatory Creek, and that would be the north boundary of our property. And then where it says Creek Ridge Pass, just to the east of that were, maybe not very far over, it was the westerly edge, and it went all the way back to the creek. And then on the easterly side, it would be pretty much where that other road is, just to the right of the A. And then the town line road would be the other boundary.
So was there a farm to the west of you before you got to 101?
Yes, there was. In fact, one of the ladies, one of the daughters is here, the Schroeder farm.
Yeah.
Was right about a quarter mile from 101. In other words, it would be just about where that Creek View Trail is, right there, is where their farm was. And he was a really good welder and blacksmith, and we used to get a lot of our stuff fixed right there from him.
40 acres.
40
Right.
acres.
If we go back a little bit, and I don't know what kind of pictures are ahead yet. Do we have any cows?
Oh, they're up ahead. This is what your farm looks like today.
Yes. And then we have a person sitting in the audience that lives on the farm property. And that's how this all started, is that I was over at her house and she talked about where she is, and I said, well, this is our farm. And then she said, well, would you consider sharing your information?
So that kind of horseshoe road that says Barrington Court,
Correct.
is that on your farm?
That would be right on. That lake was always there. It was not pretty deep.
Is that kind of swamp area that we were looking at in some of the pictures?
Yeah, you know,
That one there, you're talking right about that Barrington Court. That was just the back little, I don't think we had a picture of it. That was out in the middle of the pasture.
it was just a swampy area. That's all it was. Minnesota, you know, we call everything a lake.
That was, yeah, we skated, and we also, because there were huge hills along all the sides of it, we would use those for sliding, and then we could really make headway when we hit the ice, and we'd go across the entire water path on ice and go up to the other side. So that was also an area that the cows would walk in and leave the large humps of grass and knolls, and they'd get real hard. So we demolished a lot of slides and toboggans in that pasture area.
And then just across the road there, we used to farm that hillside where all these homes are. We used to farm that, and that was pretty dangerous. That hill was very dangerous, and we rolled a couple rakes on that one when we were pulling across with the tractor. But that was that was on the Eden Prairie side.
Betty, could you tell us about, I think it's interesting when you were telling us about how Herb did research on your farm.
Experimental for Minneapolis
Yeah,
Moon.
could you tell us why your farm was used because of the hills of the,
Because of the hills, they like to do experimental work because of the hills, so they could adjust their machinery, what they were experimenting on, to see how it would work. It's basically baling on the hills, hay and that. And yeah.
That was the combine that we had purchased, and we had tried it out on the farm there, And it was such a steep hill, and what worked out so well on it is it had side hill leveling, and the header, which cuts the grain, would stay even, follow the hills, and your axle would follow it, but you could level the whole machine up so you wouldn't waste any of the grain, and it would work better. And that was one of the first ones that they ever came around with, Minneapolis Moline. And Dad did a lot of custom work with that combine.
Mrs. Paulsen, did you know the origin of the name Purgatory Creek?
Oh, I know very little about Purgatory Creek.
The story, sure.
The
You know it? Do I know it? No. I wondered.
if would Louis know?
I think Louis Huber knows a little bit about it, and he used to have the property right to the north of us, so he might want to fill us in on a little if you'd like.
I think the story is that Purgatory Creek was a very insecty, mosquito-y kind of area, and the early settlers who had to come through that area would say, "Oh my God, the mosquitoes are just terrible here. This is just like hell." And somebody else would say, "It's worse than hell. I think it's purgatory."
Well, where I'd like to go with this is that we're to talk about the dairy farm, and we've sort of gotten away from that. We shipped milk, and there were a lot of demands on you on how to ship milk and the type of milk. And of course, when you're doing that, you want to get the best grade. We had grade A and grade B milk. Grade A gave you the highest price, and we were there to make money. So we shipped milk to Northland Milk Company, Bungards, Ewald Brothers, and we had many people that were our milk haulers that became our friends, such as Herb Halasic and Walt Huber, who took milk to the Twin City Milk Company. And perhaps, Bert, you can talk about some of the things we did so that we maintain the grade A milk.
Well, one of the main things you had to do was you had to keep everything white and clean. You'd have to paint the milk house, and then you would spray it for flies and stuff, and we used to have some stickers that you'd hang in there. And and you used to have to whitewash the barn every couple of years and sweep it down to keep the cobwebs, no flies. And then we would have to spread lime on the sidewalks where the cows walk back and forth in and out of the barn, in which we use the same sidewalk to haul our milk up to the milk house. And then they would have inspectors come out to the farm unannounced anytime they wanted. They'd just walk in and they would rate it, and you had to keep everything just perfect, or they would knock you down to grade B milk. Then you didn't get as much money that way. So everything was kept very clean.
One of our favorite things to do as children was to, on Sunday afternoons when it was very cold out. Kathy, what did we do? Kathleen.
We would go out and get milk from out of the bulk tank. Early on in the years, we had milk that was put into cans and then would be shipped in. But then later on, we got introduced to a bulk tank. I don't know what year that happened, but we would go out and agitate the milk with a milk bucket, and we would bring it in, and we would have hot chocolate on very cold nights. And sometimes that even involved going out there at midnight, whatever it took to please us. So.
Kathy, do you remember how Mother made that chocolate milk?
She would heat it up on the stove, and we had Hershey cocoa and a little bit of vanilla, and of course some sugar. And then we had marshmallows if we had them around.
Everything was made from scratch. Who would like to address Mr. Bull?
Well, what can we say about the old bull here?
Well, that's a Guernsey.
Oh,
No,
that's
that's
a Hereford.
That's a Hereford.
Not exactly sure which one of these that when it was taken, if it was back at the old farm or up at the farm up in Corcoran. Well, we used the bull for breeding purposes. It would deliver smaller calves, so for the dairy cows could deliver smaller calves and not have so much trouble with the breeding process.
Of course, that's the little critter having his dinner.
Those are
Hereford.
Herefords.
Yeah, those are beef cattle. Yeah. Because they, if you have the Guernsey.
There's a lot of your beef cattle, your Holstein cattle, when they're young, and the first time they come around to be bred in that, you use the bull here, and then you had a smaller calf, and then you get the Holstein bull normally from there on. Then the cow could handle having a bigger calf. Otherwise, you could lose them that way.
Oh, that's a Holstein.
There were times when, in shipping the milk, and this was back when Dad shipped milk in the cans, that snowstorms would come. And there was no equipment to clean out those roads like they do today. It was like, how do we get the milk out? That milk had to go out every day and then get new clean cans for the next milking. So when we had those snowstorms, Dad hitched up the team of horses to the sleigh. The milk cans were loaded, and then we, the children, got on the sleigh as well. And any neighbors that could walk up and get on the sleigh, they went as well. And we went down the road, and Crosstown is not exactly the way it was then. We had very deep valleys and very high hills, and they've cut those hills down. But we got to a place by Alvin Pica's house, and it dropped very deep, and it was like, oh no, now what's going to happen? And Bert can add a little piece here that's kind of cool.
Well, when Dad would take us to meet the school bus, well, we couldn't get through on the road because the snow was so deep. The horses would drag their bellies and they couldn't reach down to the road so they'd get traction. So we would cut off through the woods and go up through there because it wasn't drifted in so bad, and then we'd come around Duck Lake Road and then down and cut across and back onto Town Line Road again. And that lasted about 2 weeks before they finally got a bulldozer in there and opened up Town Line Road. But that was fun. That was to ride the sleigh and get to the school. We had a milk hauler. Herb Halasik used to pick it up, and they would haul it to either Ewald Brothers or Twin City Dairy, and they would distribute it to other places.
On the farm, we had many chores, and the girls had their chores, the boys had their chores. One of our chores was to candle eggs. So it was go out, pick eggs, and then bring them in and candle them. We had a little machine. You could hold the egg up to it and look in it. If it had blood in it or any defect, it had to be discarded. If it had a crack, a chip, or brown, you could not ship that egg. We would ship the eggs in 30 cases at a time, and we took them to Glen Lake to Kramer's, and we took them to Hopkins to Hovander's. Now, okay, there's the chickens. The chickens, the eggs that were discarded that they said, oh no, it's got a chip, it's a brown, we can't ship that. It was still put to use. Nothing went to waste on the farm. So a angel food cake took 13 egg whites and soft silk flour, and Mom would stand there and make angel food cake with 13 egg whites. Where do the egg yolks go? The biggest roaster that you know today that you roast your turkey in would end up with about 2 inches of wonderful baked custard, and that we would have. We never went without goodies. I mean, it was wonderful. We didn't know it at the time. We enjoyed it and loved it, as well as all her baking that she did. In butchering, Kathy might address what, from when we butchered, we rendered lard. Do you want to talk about that a little bit, Kathy?
Well, we would always render lard. That's the trimmings that you take. It's what they call leaf lard. It's the best part of the lard. And when you render it at a very low temperature, and then you let it cool down. And this lard is used, well, we always used it primarily for pie crust because it makes the best pie crust. But back in our days growing up, it was used for cookies and breads and greasing pans and whatever we had to fry that needed extra oil or fat, we would use it for that.
You still do it today, too.
Nice tradition to carry on. That makes the most delicious pie crust there is. Another thing that we had that was really great was that when Mother would cook big kettles in the morning of prunes, we would have that for breakfast, but we knew when we got home we were going to get kolaches, and they were wonderful, and we still get them today. Kolaches. It's a very sweet pastry that is cut into squares, and you put prune in the center, maybe apricot, maybe poppy seed, whatever filling you would like, and you tie the 2 corners together so you get a square pillow, and then bake it off, and it's wonderful. She's now incorporated into making it into a roll that we slice, so it's still just as delicious. It doesn't make any difference. Is that Czechoslovakian
yes,
dish?
that's Bohemian and Czechoslovakian, yeah. That's where original. Boy, they were good.
She also made donuts, homemade donuts. So when us girls got off the school bus and got in, our job was to glaze them or sugar them. It was delicious, and many of our friends would come to the farm and eat that. That's great memories that they share with us today about doing that. Carol has a little information.
The rolls that Mom changed the kolaches into because she couldn't keep up with making enough to supply all of us. And so she would make them in these logs, and like a cinnamon roll would be in a log, and she put the filling in that. So when I was in the head baking position at the high school, I incorporated that into our holiday, which we baked for 10 schools. And when I left there, they were still using those as their Christmas holiday treat.
Sharon, maybe you can share with us about the butchering that we did of the chickens.
Butchering of the chickens?
Yes.
Yeah.
Or the eggs.
Or the the chickens. Dad would chop off their heads and throw the chickens into the cornfield and let them jump around. That's where that phrase comes, when you're running around with your chicken like a head on. And so anyway, we would have hot water, and we dipped them, and us kids would sit around, and we would pick the feathers and let them fly all over the place. And Mother used to gut them, and then we'd eat them after we cooked them.
Did you ever can chickens? When Mom and Dad would order chickens early in the spring, in the spring, and then they would pick up the little baby chicks, and they would have a brooder house set up for them. And then Dad would put them in there till they got large enough to be turned out into the yard, so they could get gravel to help them digest their food. He'd have a fenced-in area, and those chickens would stay out in that area. And then some of them would get real challenging, and they'd decide they'd fly over the fence. And that's where we came up with free-range chickens.
Sharon?
It wouldn't be nothing to be butchering about 60 to 80 chickens in one time. And all of us kids had a chance to get in there, and we all had a chance to pick up the chickens, bring them back, and help them pick the feathers and that. Mom and my dad's twin sister, they used to go down in the basement of the house there and go to the big tubs, and that's where they did all their cleaning them out and wash them and that. And then when you get all done with that, you had hair on them. You don't realize, but chickens underneath the feathers, they do have hair. And then Dad used to take a paper and wrap it up, and then he would singe the hair off of them. Of course, now they got better ways of doing it. An old blowtorch and that works better. But back then, when Mom used to fry them chickens up and that, and you couldn't get a better tasting chicken then than you do now. The chickens don't taste the same.
Sharon had another way of getting chickens killed. How was that, Sharon?
I used to go out and pick the eggs up out of the chicken coop, and we had one rooster, and he would come after us. So one day I had a nice big stick in my hand, and I said, "This is going to be it. You're going to leave me alone." And he came, and with one swoop, I hit that rooster over the head and killed him. And I ran down to Dad, and I said, Dad, I killed a rooster. I killed it. Go get the hatchet and tell Mom we're having chicken.
We did.
On the farm we had, it was known, and today you will hear statistics about the accidents that happen on a farm. And it's due to all the mechanical equipment and pieces that we use as well as the machinery. And so there were a few things that happened on the farm. And maybe Sharon, you can tell about your first story, and then some of the others can add.
Was what? Which one?
When you like to play with gasoline.
Oh, the matches and the caps. Well, we used to get those round caps, and you used to be able to stretch them out and light them, and they'd go pop, 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 pop. Well, mine didn't do that one day. So I went out, and I got the gas can, because mine wouldn't start and stay lit. Well, it was empty, I thought. And when I went like this, that cap sparked. That gasoline can flipped over and burned my shirt and my hair, my eyelashes, my arms, and my shirt was on fire. And Barbara had just learned in first aid in school to drop and roll. And she caught up to me and pushed me down and rolled me. And my dad would not take me for a ride so I could hang my arms out to cool. He says, "You're going to learn."
Danny, can you tell another story?
I have had many incidents out there. Me and my brother, we had one incident. We had a cow that had a calf, and it was in the fall. And it was, of course, in the fall you get a lot of rain, and in where the cattle go in and out to the barn gets awful muddy, and you can have up to a foot of mud in there. Well, we got the cow and the calf in the barn, and then my brother hollered and he said, "Hey, the cow's coming." I only had part of the fence, the gate, hooked on the top. I ran to the door to shut it. Well, that's when I met Mrs. Cow, and she and I went backwards. And we got back to the fence. That's when she jumped, and she went over the fence, and she took me with her. And I got tangled up in the barbed wire. And the cows, when they go fully out and they get their legs caught in it, they stop, and then after that, they start shaking their leg to get the leg free. Well, that's when my cuts came in. So I ended up with a few cuts here and there, and I came into my brother, and I said, "Hey," I said, "I got to go up to the house. I'm bleeding." And, "Oh, no, you're okay. Let me see." And then the blood was running down back of my neck, and because I had 6 stitches in the back of my head and a couple cuts on my arm, but I survived it. Mom had to take me to Methodist and have it sewed up. So, but that's just some of the things that we do on the farm that you run across that you just don't expect it, getting hurt or anything. But I think Mom and Dad always sweat every day about, are we going to have a good day today or not?
How about your other accident with the cutting?
Like I said, there was many accidents I had. And this one here is my brother Marty that passed away. I didn't know it, but they put a fence around our manure pile because back then you couldn't allow the cows to climb on top of the manure pile. Well, we had a calf there, and we used to give it dirt. So I told Marty, "I'll go get some." So I ran out there because he didn't believe me that it'll eat dirt. So I ran out there, and I was running out there. I seen the fence. It was about right to here. Well, I thought I could make it underneath it. And I made a dive underneath, and when I did that, it hooked onto my shirt, came up and cut my neck open. That's when I put my hand down there, and I felt it. Well, then I went to my brother Marty, and I said, "Hey, I cut my neck." And he said, "Oh, let me see." Well, I thought he was going to pass out, but he grabbed me, and he ran up to the house. Well, there's another trip to Methodist. So they got to know me down there.
Are there any other stories that we would like to add to this? One of the stories, and I'm not sure which one of you shared, was when we were doing something, you better do it right, because if you don't do it, you're going to do it again until you get it right. Who shared that story? She doesn't remember it, so I don't know.
Mom used to get after me for not sweeping the floor good enough and picking up and missing too many things, and I am not. Anyway, so she'd always make me go back and re-sweep the floor and re-sweep the floor, until finally she took me in to the eye doctor and found out I needed glasses and I couldn't see the dirt I was missing.
There, Dorothy. Our birth order. My brother Martin, that's deceased. I'm next. Carol.
Sharon. That's the baby.
I think we figured that out now.
Another fun story was that my dad's twin sister would love to come out to the farm. She never had any children, so us children were her favorites, what she had. But mother would go to the hospital to have a baby, so she's going to come out and help her twin brother out, and she's going to pick some apples off the apple tree and make us apples. Well, unfortunate for her, as fast as she peeled those apples, us kids were eating them because she didn't know to get rid of us. That was kind of cute. Yes, he did, and I will let Mom address that.
Oh, yes, we had a few, maybe 3 or 4, and they helped with a lot of the hard work till the kids got old enough, the boys got old enough, and they did the milking and stuff. But you know, when you hired help, those people are clever too. You know, when he would do custom work out, and then he'd tell them that make sure the barn is clean and straw and stuff brought in. Yeah. Then he'd go down and they would get the cows in. Well, then when the barn looked good, they spread a lot of straw around. But the manure was still underneath. There wasn't that much in it, so that they thought if they put the straw over there, Herbie wouldn't know the difference. Clever. But he didn't keep them too long. But it was hard to get good help on the farm back in those days during the war. And things were rationed. Yep.
We also had a vegetable garden, and we raised lots of vegetables, and from there we had to learn to can it and freeze it so that we went through the winter. We were very self-sufficient on that farm. And another great thing was that Mom would tell us stories, and she does that today. She will come up with the cutest little ditty, and it just isn't something that she's memorized or she's going to do. It just comes up. You could be in the middle of doing something, and she'll say a story. And she did that today. So, and I said, no, in the middle of this presentation, if you come up with a story, share it. She didn't think she would do that. But it's cute. They're cute. They're little children's rhymes that you don't hear anymore, that are so great from in the past. There's a question? What year did we sell the farm?
We sold it in 1969 to Minnetonka Scenic. It was I understood a group of businessmen, wealthy men from Minnetonka that let in a group that was buying property for development. Yeah, that's what our property was all turned into. It looks like a little town there now. It does. Who? No, not with ours. Not that I know of.
Did Herbert's father homestead the property, or how did the family?
Yes, it was his father, Martin, and Agnes bought the farm. It was the old Brokel farm. But which Brokel, I don't know. There was a lot of Brokels.
And our understanding is that it was a settlement before the Brokels had it. Are there any other questions?
In 1930. All the, well, the end of 1930 and the 40s. Yeah, the cows, I really couldn't tell you just, but they were a low price. But I know that when we shipped in pigs and hogs, we got a nickel a pound for pigs. And we didn't get much more for cows. Yeah, it was the 40 acres.
Where did you go after you sold that?
Pardon?
Where did you go after you sold that farm?
We moved to Corcoran. We bought another farm because my husband had to milk his cows. So, yeah.
They both supplemented, though. I'm not sure what year that Herb Paulsen also went out and started driving school bus. And he drove school bus for 40 years, correct?
Yeah, all told, yeah.
And he drove for DeVoe Bus Company that's right in Minnetonka. And one of the other questions that I was asked earlier is what happened when the older children moved off the farm, and how did it affect the younger children? Well, by the time we moved off, those younger children were older, and they had to step right in work too. But Dad had already was supplementing the income by driving bus, and then eventually Mom started driving school bus as well. Is there anything you want to add to that?
Nothing outside. I drove school bus for 28 years. I started out with DeVoe's, ended up driving from Buffalo, Wayzata, Hammer School.
And when they sold that farm, Deborah and Jerry were the youngest in the family. They had to leave their school district at Minnetonka, and then they attended Buffalo, so that was hard. Any other questions? Are there any other questions? We were going to skip that.
Yes, we had some fun back in them days. That little lake that was in the middle of the pasture was surrounded by hills and some trees and some pretty steep hills in the back right by Purgatory Creek. And we used to, once in a while, would find some beer someplace and would have a pasture party. And a couple of my buddies would get stuck on the back of the hills because they thought they could drive any place. So, and I believe he's the one guy that answers that question. We had a lot of fun back then on the farm. And we had rules too. We had a lot of rules. I mean, they made sure nobody left there. If you had some beer to drink, you didn't drink and drive. He would take the keys away, and you didn't leave if you were drinking.
Yeah, he used to make the kids, well, when Marty was one of the first one who started the pasture parties, Dad would have them drop their keys off as they came. And usually most of them had enough to drink that he would not let them leave. So we would wake up in the morning to find somebody laying on the couch, on the floor, on the front lawn, you know, but they did not leave there until Dad okayed it.
We did have a lot of fun back in those days because we used to have a lot of barn dances. And those were a lot of fun. And Dick and Al, what were their names? Dick and Al, the Red Jackets. And they did the play. And they were good. And when they get a pony of beer and they put it out underneath an apple tree, and the guys would drink beer and they'd come in and the music started. And, well, yeah, you had food. You went home. Sometimes you got home in time to change your clothes and milk cows.
They didn't have entertainment. We didn't have, but they didn't have any entertainment. Television wasn't there yet. So neighbors were neighbors. They helped each other, like the threshing and any other work. And they danced and they played cards together. They were a community, an extension of their own family, which we don't have that in this day and age, which is too bad.